Okay, let me start by telling you some stuff you don't give a crap about, but maybe my attitude will. It, you'll understand my attitude towards this video. My computer stopped working. My website stopped working. I tried old computers. They didn't work. I bought a used computer for 180 US dollars, and finally I'm trying this one. And I made the video before, and I thought it was going to be a really good video, and it all is gone. So you don't give a crap about that. Let me talk about these tests. Here is Surinam. Maybe this project really wasn't in Surinam, but I had a great honor of going there and talking to some very nice people there. This test is supposed to take 4 hours. Now, my theme, the big themes of this video and this test are presenting scenarios. I guess that's a little bit less. Um, Making a monthly timeline that converts to an annual timeline. It shouldn't be difficult. And the last thing you should ever do in a test like this, I believe at least, is to go to some course you've paid 1,000 US dollars for or something like that, and then say, oh, we've got to put timelines in a separate sheet and all this stuff. No, please don't do that. Please just be really flexible. Just adapt your Excel and your modeling to the to the uh, 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 to the class and to the test. Let me see. Other than scenarios and monthly payments, this had a very simple kind of debt structure, but it did have a circular reference, and I'm not sure the people making these tests really kind of understood that it had a circular reference. Now, the big thing for me is to start, and I cheat. I cheat when I make these videos because I read the cases before. I read the cases when somebody sends me an email. Of course, this project wasn't, I told you it wasn't in Suriname. But read them and think. It's a very difficult thing to do if you haven't done a lot of modeling. If you've just taken some modeling classes in university, or not even classes, just part of your things where you've done a DCF model, that's not going to help you at all. Uh, uh, you've got to read these and say, ah, this is the tricky part. Now let's work through this. 4 hours, that should be okay. That's a lot of time to waste on this. And if you go in the morning, and get some coffee, maybe that'll be good. So that says there's a fund specializing in renewable energy, 100 megawatt grid tied wind plant. Grid tied. I don't never heard that term. With 9 cents a kilowatt hour, that's so expensive it would make your head shake. Whatever. That was a stupid. Whatever. See, now you know my attitude. Cost 1,500. That's probably too much these days for wind. Although wind hasn't come down the way solar has. And then optional. The contractor is asked for 20% advance payment, 70% at 3 months, and the balance at COD. So what you're going to have to kind of do is you're going to have to make a monthly timeline. Uh, you know, how does this work? When I put my thing up there, maybe I'll show it. Uh, Monthly to probably to annual. Okay. Oh no. Okay, I've got to start talking faster. I really have to. Okay, that's the one because I was going to make my thing work much faster. So I'm gonna speak a lot faster. And then they said there's a wind resource assessment, kWh divided by kWp. kWp is for solar. I've never seen it used for wind, but whatever. They made it, and then they made a 70 P75, which is never used. I'm not going to waste time typing in again because that wasted too much time. And then they said optional grid availability is 98%. That's so simple. Why don't you just do it? Annual O&M is 50K per megawatt. So put in, when you get this, put in 50, comma, 1, 2, 3, and then put it like that in your model. Don't get lost with thousands and all of this, okay? Although it's just amazing how all of these companies put things in like millions or something. You can't even see the numbers. I got to stop bitching and keep going, okay? And then they've got inflation as normal, okay? Whatever. Insurance, 1% per year. By the way, insurance is increasing a lot more than that. That's a big problem these days. So if you want to act smart and talk about that, SG&A 200K, put again 200,000. You're going to have a constant debt to capital. How easy that seems to be. A loan tenor 15 years. How easy that seems to be. A fixed interest rate of 6%. Oh, all very easy. Except the stupid thing, they put this this construction is going to take 1 year, so there's an implicit interest during construction. Now I don't know if these people may be expected you to ignore interest during construction. I don't see how you could, and that makes the whole thing a little more complicated. Okay, and then they have a tax rate. Good. Okay, 5% annually. That's 20 years, right? And then working capital. They have working capital, and don't get intimidated, but it illustrates the problem. Make any other reasonable simplified assumptions you see fit. That might be, I don't know, whatever. Ensure that the 3 financial statements are there. Now, I go crazy with this, and maybe I shouldn't. Okay, the financial statements are at the end. Project finance is about IRRs, DSCRs, cash flows, cash flows, cash flows. You can put financial statements there, but they really should be at the end. If you start the model with the profit and loss, let's put revenues and expenses, EBITDA, let's take away depreciation, blah, blah, blah. You really want to start with how the project really works. It works with electricity being produced and the prices, and then you get the EBITDA, that's fine, and then you can get project IRR, and you work through you make a working sheet rather than a trying to put everything in a financial statement right at the beginning. The financial statement should be at the end, okay? And then models will be evaluated on the error. And look at this. Now, error checks should be built in, okay? So I put in some error checks. Now I've done this whole model. I'm kind of all sad about this. And then what did we have here? I don't know what I did. I put some spaces. Sorry about that. Equity IRR, project IRR, good. Multiple of the money, which is just whole life. What they mean is add up all the cash flows you get in divided by the cash flows you get out. You could call that whatever it is, MO, multiple of invested capital. It's a payback period. Okay, and then they have something a little bit interesting. Exit 3 years after operation. And then this is one, I think I made another video about this. I know I did. Where I talked about the BS finance that they used. Because they say your buyer's IRR is 7%. They gave you the cost of capital. They gave you the equity cost of capital. That's what cost of capital is. It's how much somebody would pay for your asset. It's a minimum rate of return they will accept to pay for the asset. And presumably, you want to get them the price up and have them price down. And then they have a bunch of sensitivity. And immediately you think, aha. And oh, did they have a loan repayment tenor? I think I might not have put that in. And then they even had a delay of construction. So you want to make your construction period totally variable. So that's okay. 4 hours should be enough. I'm being arrogant here, and I hate arrogance so much. And then this crap the whack stuff is just so bad that I can't even stand it. I already made a video on it. So in this case, we're gonna make the model, but we're not gonna make the model because I already made it. And let me go through it quickly. And let me go through the ideas quickly here. Okay, so the first thing, set up. Now the way I type this in, I just started putting all the data in here. The construction period, the operation period. We have an interest rate sensitivity, and I forgot to put in. This is good. I forgot to put in the tenor sensitivity. Maybe this is good that I'm not doing it really all very quickly. So I typed this in, and then this is something I think maybe it's a little bit more important. Go to my website if you could. You don't have to. Go to the home page, and after the home page, you get this go to the generic macros, and when you get this generic macros, you can save it. Okay, when you save it, don't open it. Go here and find where you got it, and once you find where you got it, you right click, and then you go to properties, and when you go to properties, you unblock it, and after you unblock it, you apply it, and then we can open it. Okay, that's just because of Windows and all their new little protections. When you open it, you click on this button and make sure that these little screens come up, and everything's open source, so you can see how I make the screens with these user forms, blah, blah, blah. And then once you have that, then, whoops, it's a new computer. Then we can do all this formatting, and we can press Control-Alt-C to do the formatting. I guess I'm going to do that right now. There's a very good chance I might screw things up. I'm going to make sure we don't clean the conditional formatting. I've got to tell you that. I'm going to not put anything at the beginning. This column B, I made column A and B and C really small. For me, that's a really, really big deal. Not just A, you got to be a little more cool by making them all a little bigger. And then this marks the lengths, blah, blah, blah. And then you press color the sheet. And hopefully it will just recolor this whole thing. In fact, if I went Control-Alt-C again, if I want to kind of start over, I would put, again, this is unclicked. We got to make sure this is unclicked. I'd reset and I don't want to remove the conditional formatting. I'm going to leave all that conditional formatting in. Maybe I shouldn't. And so what I really did was start just by typing these things in. Okay, and these are the inputs they gave you. They gave you the yield, remember, which is the KWH divided. I didn't put KWP there. And if you take that yield, you understand that KWH divided by KW gives you hours. And it's an annual yield. This should have really been, if we're more careful, we put annual yield here, okay? And maybe this should have been PA. And then, by the way, this is so important, put in the units everywhere, and I don't know what just happened to the units. And, I guess I have to format this a little, excuse me. Okay, and if you look and you want to be cool and you want to get this, whatever, you press Shift Control D for. Oops, I can't do that because of the stupid thing on here. But you know what? I'll do it in a different way. Just a minute. I'm gonna copy this formatting. So just with that generic macro open, you go down, okay, and you press Shift Control D on all of these. I'm going to put Alt EST, okay, and we get our little formatting right. Okay, and then we put in the capacity. The capacity factor is if there are 8, 760 hours in a non-leap year, we take that number divided by 8, 760, and you can put the grid availability, like you say, and then you put some, I put some O&M escalation in here. If you have this generic macros, there are a lot of little shortcuts, Shift Control P. So hopefully you don't really waste your time, but maybe that's a little too much to investment for you. Then we put some tax rates in, and then we start putting the cash flow items, the price and the insurance and the capex. Okay, and our model should correspond to all of this. And then we finally have these debt parameters, which were very simple. I split it between the debt size, the debt repayment, the interest rate, and the tenor. And then they had a little thing in that. I read through that a little too quickly, but they said either do a flat P&I or flat P. Flat P&I is just the level debt service, and you say, aha, I'm going to use the PMT function. And even if I'm a young person too smart for doing any of this stuff, I'm going to understand and use this old-fashioned PMT, which I used to have to get a book out and read an annuity factor on. And that answers, and that does so much for you. Okay, I'm sorry, my mood is a little bad. And then we have the exit values. So those are the inputs, and I would spend some time getting these right. Now, I think what I'm going to do is now the scenarios were a big part of this. And luckily, they gave you every single assumption that was basically a constant. So that input C means input constants. And there are some, when you steal other people's models, like I say, one of the best things I could do at nighttime is, I used to be able to drink a glass of wine and look at somebody else's model and say, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. No, this is kind of cool. Let's steal this one. Go through some actual models. Now, if you give me this little Gmail, whatever, send me a little email, I'll give you a whole bunch of example models. Some will suck. Some will maybe have some things you can borrow or steal. Okay? I'm slouching too much. Excuse me. Now I'm going to press Control-Alt-C again. This time I think I'm changing my mind a little bit, and I'm going to clean the conditional formatting. And whoops, I'm going to reset the sheets. Now I just now when some people, if you go to what is it, Gridlines or something, what they do is let's copy. So let's just get this one right. And I didn't talk about this this kind of S-curve thing. Whoops. This is a new computer. Sorry. Okay. And let's make this. Come on. Oh, God. I really wanted to do this quickly. Okay, and I'm screwing up. This is our base case, basically, our P50 case. Maybe I should have retitled this the base case, but I'm not going to bother doing that right now. I really don't want to waste your time. Okay, and then the only thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to make this debt tenor down here 20 years. Let's make it 25 years. And that's probably a much better assumption to put in, even though it's not the real debt. It's kind of like you have some refinancing, which everything's screwed up on this one anyway. So because they really should be using sculpting. Now what we can do is, first of all, right now I'm going to have to be careful with this. I guess I'll do this right now. You put in a scenario number, and then you use the index function. That's the big deal. You could use choose, you could use lookup. Who cares if you're going to start debating me on this kind of crap, which this Reddit or whatever these people do? Who gives a shit? Index is kind of easy for me because I've always used it. And it just says, look across, fix this one, and take the right scenario. And when you see that scenario, how easy is that? All we have to do is make the base case. And then in the P75 case, we only change this. Now, if you press number 2 up here, then it'll give you the next case. But it might be really good to show which case you're on. And what you can do to be fancy, and just you have to kind of get good and fast at this stuff, is you select the area, but then once you selected the area, go way up to the top, then go to home, and once you go to home, go to conditional formatting, go to a new rule, and then go to use a formula. So that's all the fancy stuff, and you click on this one and you say, I just want to keep the row constant, and then you compare that to this one, and then that's already F4, and then you press this and you get a, let's put a fill in and make it kind of light, and press OK and OK. And what happens then is if we press and we start changing the scenario around, we show the scenario. But something else that people like to do perhaps is to say, look, this is the number that changed in this case, so let's highlight this number that changed. To do that, I would select, we don't want to select the base case this time. This time we select the whole thing. Now this is kind of optional, but with 4 hours, you know, you might want to do this obviously at the end, not at the beginning, because it might waste your time and you might start getting frustrated. You put a new rule, but once you practice this a bunch, and then you click on this one, and this time you click on this little cell and press F4, and make sure nothing is changed, and then you say, well, let's make, if it's not equal to this one, and then you make the F4 and just click on the only the column, and then you say, oh, let's make a format. What color should we make this? Maybe let's make it this one, okay? And then we'll press OK, and then you can see, oh, oh, shit. Okay, I just screwed up. I don't even know what I did when I screwed it up, but I redid it. Now we can see, okay, this changed. Here, this changed from the base case. And maybe you want to highlight it in a little better, different color, and then you can see exactly what changed. And since they asked a whole bunch about sensitivity, scenario analysis, maybe that's what you really want to show. And where is our there's our accounts payable days, and there's our change we just made. Okay, so that's setting it up. It might take a little while to do that. Okay, and now finally, let's redo this formatting, Control-Alt-C again. And again, I'm doing this a little bit too much perhaps, but this time I don't want to clean the conditional formatting, and I'm just going to press color the sheet. If you take the IRR, I think the IRR might be pretty good on learning some of these things. Okay, you have to practice it a few times, and you have to practice about 5 or 6 times until you get, yes, I can do it really fast. So let's put it back to the base case. Now, when we go to I then said, let's make a summary case. I'll just give you a preview. Oh, I don't know what just happened to the equity value. Oh, crap. And then we have our financial statements, and we have some working analysis. And I think what happened, I need to, this time I'm going to explain this later, but just to kind of, no, it has iterative calculations, so that's not true. So those are some of the things we're going to do, and I'm going to do it really quickly, and maybe we can find out what's wrong. They started begging for the financial statements. The financial statements are just the profit and loss. You put the EBITDA in, you put the depreciation in, and everything comes. Now, depreciation, I must have made some idiotic mistake on, and that seems to caused everything to be a problem. Let me just fix that. I'm going to pause. Okay, I just deleted the interest during construction. I don't understand. I put a iteration button in here, and I hate that, but perhaps that's a really good example of the problem. Now, the first step is to set up this timeline. Now, I did this timeline maybe perhaps in a silly way. I could have put a minus up here we get the let's perhaps take this away just a minute, and I'm going to just reset the colors for a minute. What a waste. What a waste. I promised myself not to do this. Oh, shit. Okay, we bring things from our so the very first thing I do is I set up a counter. Now, it could be the case, and I interrupted myself. Notice, by the way, I put an audit check here because they asked for an audit check. It could be it. You could have done this, so I would have made an equal sign and put a minus the 12 months of construction, which has to be variable, +1. And then I would go all the way across, and I can't do this with my Shift Control R, by the way. And I would then say this, and then, whoops, sorry, I start with -11, and then I put this +1, Shift Control right arrow, Control R. Okay, so then there are, if you go all the way to 0, there are going to be 12 construction period. You could have done that way, that would have been fine. And then when we put our, by the way, when we put our I wanted to do this kind of stuff, but I won't do it right now. If we put our construction sensitivity, which they were going to give you extra credit on, so we take this one, and this time our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my God. Okay, well, that was pretty idiotic. When I put my new one in, here's what I do. I press Alt-E-I-S. It's a wonderful thing somebody taught me a long time ago. And so that construction sensitivity should have been 7. Okay, I can say I made that mistake on purpose. And then what we really want to do is when we do our careful working analysis, now I start with -23, and then my construction period would have been whenever this thing is less than 0, less than or equal to 0, excuse me, and then post-construction would have been whenever this thing is more than 0. Now I did it a different way, okay? I just said, okay, well, and this illustrates, don't start being bureaucratic. And don't start thinking I'm better than anybody else and all this. So I just put a 1, and then I press, I go, whatever. And then I press Alt-EIS and press something like, whatever. I think it was, for some reason, 64. Is that what it was at the end? Oops, it was 62. Okay. There has to be enough monthly periods, and then you just do this. And then the construction period is, and what I'm doing here is so crucial. F2. I think the technique should be called F2, and then you should press Control square bracket to find out where things come from. Control and square bracket, and then F5. F2 control square bracket F5. Everything should be so transparent. And then when I put the post construction, I use not a lot, and I don't put an if statement. What a waste of putting an if statement. I just put equal not. The construction period is a 1 or a 0. Actually, let me just do that. This construction period is whenever this thing is less than or equal to this thing over here. And you always, you always use the F4 key. And then if you don't like the true or false, you press Shift Control B because you've got the generic macros open. And I just screwed up again. Equal this thing is less than or equal to this, F4, Shift Control B, and then Shift Control R. Okay, and then we go all the way out here, and we have a construction period, and they wanted some error checking. So you can just sum this, and if you sum this with the generic macros, you press Shift Control V for Victor, and then you make sure that these are equal. And then I can do this now, and then you make a little audit page, and you say, okay, our construction period, and you just grab that from the audit page. And then you can do a very similar thing with the post construction. You say, well, this I'm just going to do the same thing, equal not the construction expenditure, and I used not all the time. I didn't used to use that. I used to think, oh, that's too fancy. Shift Control B to make it a 1, Shift Control R to go all the way across. Now, that's not quite right. That's going to give you a whole bunch. The operating life here is what we can do is make a counter. We say take this one and you add to this one. Now this is a little too complicated. You could actually do this easier, and then you can take this counter and say, well, it's got to be two things. It's first got to be not the construction period again, or we could just put the operating period here, post construction, and then this number has to be, this counter that we just made has to be less than or equal to this one. Okay, and then Shift Control B again and Shift Control R, and when you do that you can press Shift Control V for Victor, and then you can make another little test that these things equal. Okay, and then you've got the timeline done, and that's a big deal. And then I'm going to put that test for the operating period right here. Okay, and if you can do this kind of thing really quickly, you probably could go a lot more quickly than me. It would be really good. Now, if in here I put a range name for that there were 12 months in a year, okay? And I said if J5, let's just press our F2 so we show that this works. If it's the construction period, then make it 1 month per period. Otherwise, make it 12 months per period. So you go forward here, and you see that this 1 turns into 12. I was almost, and I'm not going to do this, you know, you almost could put a little fancy thing that puts a little different color on a pre-COD. And then this is a big deal. I admit I made a mistake here. If it's going to be monthly, you're going to use the XIRR. And if you use the XIRR, you need some dates. And I don't care what date we used. I put 125, and then we have 12 months, or in this case, it was all 24 months, right? Where did it go? Okay, 24 months, and then suddenly we go annual. Do you see that? So this E date, it says, okay, take the last date and add it by 1, but then when we hit the monthly period, now you could put EO month here and put the end of the month, but again, it's not that important. And then we go through and we get all of these things. They all come from the other sheet. And I think I'm going to color this sheet now. And what I did in a silly way, I think last time, is that I said, oh, let's color the top, and let's not bother coloring the top. And this time, okay, I'm gonna make this, and the reason I'm making this thing, if they're blue, that's what Kenny and F1, not F1, F9, but Gridlines does. They take this, and the blue numbers come from a different sheet. The sum numbers are in a different color. The true and false are in a different color. Okay, and that true and false, I think one day I have to change that a little bit. And then I said, okay, maybe we don't really need a whole separate section, but when we do our inflation, let's not inflate during the monthly period. That would be crazy. So when you do, make a little index. Don't try to do this, raise it to the power up at the top because you learned that in school. Just make a little index. It's so much simpler. Put a 1 there just to get it started, and then say, go to that 1 and plus the 3% multiplied by that operating period. So we turn it off. So we just start the inflation when we start and go to our annual period. Be careful with the inflation. You could have got fancy and said, oh, I'm going to inflate it by You'd have to, if it's not 3%, you'd have to take 3% raised to the 1/12th power if you were going to do it monthly. And then we put our price in, and we just, nothing fancy. The quantity is just the, I did it up here. The quantity, I should have explained this. Of course, we take the capacity, multiply it by the operating period, the capacity factor, the availability, and finally we get a production, and we can see that that's MW times the MWH divided by MW, which gives you MWH, times the 98%, which gives you the total MWH. And by putting those units in really clearly, we get there. And then we go all the way to year 20. Up here, there's our year 20. And we just use those flags. If you didn't put flags in, and if you wasted time trying to have some fancy rule and keep those flags, okay, no, they're not complicated. I don't think so. Okay. And you better practice those flags over and over and over and over again. And then you put the index in, and then you get the revenues and expenses. I'm nervous right now about and then we inflate this, okay? And they put the insurance as a percent of the capex, and so okay. Did I have to do that? What did I do for that one? I had to go down to the capex, which was not clean. Maybe we could have done the capex above. If you want to, yeah, maybe. No, I'm going to leave it like that because it's nice to have EBITDA right up here. Okay, and you can say, oh yeah, that's going to be in our financial statement. And then for our capex, we put some kind of, this was this a little bit painful thing where, okay, I used a lookup function here, and I said, okay, well, they told us, and if I put a scenario number of 1 in here, then they told us that last expenditure occurs here. So we have this funny thing where we have 3 months, and then the very, very last month we have some expenditure. So again, if I put our 7 for our construction sensitivity, I get that. Okay, and then I think that's enough. So what you do is I used a lookup. I said lookup on this number up here, and then did I use X lookup or just lookup? Yeah, the reason I use lookup is I put the 20%, then it goes down to 0, then we spend 70%. So month by month, and 4 all the way down to 24 goes to be 0. So I'm sorry I'm not going through with the lookup statement with you, but don't use ever H lookup, or you should. If I was testing something and somebody put H lookup, and I would almost say, you don't get the job. You don't. That's so obsolete. Or if you even use match and index, you said, oh, that's so silly. It's ridiculous. I almost would suggest here uh, uh, putting an underline on revenues, operating cost, and capex, because that's all you want. And then they gave you some working capital, and the working capital, it's good because they didn't say to do an annual, but if you would have tried to do a monthly one, you would have wasted a whole lot of time on this. So they said that's 2 months, which is I just divided the days by 365 and the accounts payable, and we just multiply. So we start by getting the level, and then I made a mistake, and the balance sheet didn't balance, I can tell you, by adding these and not subtracting the accounts payable, and then the change in the accounts payable is just this period minus the last period, so we don't have anything really going on until the construction period starts. And then you do something really crucial, is you take free cash flow. And perhaps I don't know if I use shift control G too much, but that's our big item, and we have a minus on the capex that comes out of our pocket, and then a plus on the EBITDA. Okay, and I guess I can't see the EBITDA, so my F2 rule didn't work perfectly here. But then you compute this, and the first time I did it, I just said, let's compute the IRR on this number. and then the IRR, oh, that's really low. And I said, oh no, there's got to be something wrong. These people are idiots when they make the tests a lot, but they're not so bad that they would put an IRR, although I have seen that. I shouldn't say that. But this, it was wrong. It was wrong because this assumes that the IRR assumes that these are equal periods. So you have to put X IRR, and then you have to go and collect all the numbers. And after you collect all the numbers, that's exactly why I put those dates in. And perhaps I should have made the freeze pain go to there. And that IRR, I say, okay, that's reasonable. I think that's really, really high, by the way. But okay, in Suriname, maybe it's okay. All right. And then they had taxes. So then we got to get depreciation. And when you do depreciation, this is something you probably learned in DPRECIAT. You could use F7, by the way, to do your little test. Shift Control E. How's that? Just to make a little thing. And what I would do is just say, okay, let's start with a flag. And this time, this is what's so crazy. If you go to one of these other outfits and they say, oh, put all those flags in one sheet and drag them over, ooh, how horrible. You just, okay, right there, we need a flag for our 20 years and our 5% depreciation. And then we can add them all up to make sure it's really 100%. We can put a little flag in there to make the test in there, and we can throw that over to our audit page. And in our audit page, I just put a little true and false. And at the very end, I use an and statement. And then I put the audit check right up here so you can see it right up at the top. Okay, and we make sure we depreciate our asset. But you've got to understand something. IDC, I don't care, interest during construction is a capital asset. It's capitalized. Don't get confused by whether the interest itself is not paid and all that, and is payment in kind. It's capitalized for accounting purposes, so our actual depreciation is going to be higher than that. But this is just for kind of free cash flow, and then we can take our EBIT as the EBITDA minus the depreciation, and then we can multiply our taxes times our EBITDA. Then we can get our free cash flow after taxes and put our project IRR here. Maybe I should have put it in this column, okay? And again, you're going to use the X IRR, not the regular old IRR. And I'm more interested in this one, frankly, because this one you can compare to the pre-tax interest rate. This one you cannot really compare to the pre-tax interest rate, so whatever. Then we get to our financing, and you notice that we don't do anything with financing until we finished all of our project IRRs. Now we put our construction expenditures in, and then you can get the total uses of construction. They didn't have any fees during construction, but they did have any interest, and then they give you the 70%. So you can say, okay, let's take all of our total this one and multiply it by 70%, and then just put our sum column. And I didn't emphasize enough how important it is to have a sum column, especially if you're going to have some tests. So we can press our total uses equal our total sources. And then we can go down, and I think we can start working on a repayment. You notice I haven't put interest during construction in because I'm terrified of it right now. Okay, and we have our total debt, but then we can say, well, okay, and this might get confusing. I just got in trouble when I was having a little session with somebody. For the debt service, if it's going to be constant, you need the total amount of the debt, you need the repayment, and all that stuff. So if we made it 25 years, again, we can go and make, oh no, where's our tenor? No, I meant that, that's number 6. I wasn't that bad. Okay, if we make it number 6, then we're making a longer debt tenor, and we have a more stretched payment. If we just do something simple and we take the total debt, remember the total debt is up here. It's the sum. So you just take this and you go up to the sum, and you don't start worrying about some idiotic rule. I'm sorry, I get crazy about these idiotic rules, and then you get that. And then I said, okay, let's put a little flag in so we can make it repayment selected. And I should really, I suppose I should have done this one for repayment selected. If it's true, it's flat. Okay, so let's make this one false. Okay, and all right. So repayment selected, and repayment. I'll call it flat P for flat interest. This time we did it false. So if we do it false, here's the only trick, and it's an important trick. You go up to the debt service and you say, okay, the debt service is the interest plus the principal. We need the repayment, and we take the repayment minus the interest. And then when you do put the interest rate in, make a monthly interest rate. Somebody said, oh, no, you shouldn't just divide it by 12. You can do this 360 business, but it's not compounding. You don't do any fancy compounding or anything like that. You see, how are they really going to pay the interest? And for me, a test like this, it's close enough to just say, okay, divide it by 12. Can you see that? Okay. And then we take our total interest as our opening balance times the interest rate, and this interest rate changes, and I should put this interest rate dash periodic, maybe. And I'm going to put a little save here, okay? And then we split the interest between interest during construction, which they have here, and interest expense. And after we do that, we need to put the interest during construction we need to depreciate that. So our total depreciation expense is more. Okay. Okay. Shift Control V for Victor, and then I press Shift Control W, and then we can finally go down and we can compute our true taxes, because in this case our depreciation. We have an additional amount of depreciation expense on the interest during construction, okay? Not that much, maybe, okay? But so the depreciation base is the depreciation without IDC. So by putting that monthly stuff in, they inadvertently, I would not be surprised if they didn't really expect you to do this, but it's kind of part of the standard model. And then we can finally get a cash flow waterfall. You notice I haven't put the interest during construction in. And we can get the working capital changes should be a subtraction, and we can see how much interest and debt service we're paying, and then get our dividends and our equity investment. Remember, that comes from the sources and uses, and you get your equity IRR below there, okay? And I think that's just about enough, but let's put our interest during construction in. And I'm not sure. I'm almost thinking, oh, maybe this is the right way to do it. Let's go, because we know we'll have a little circular reference for this. Well, I actually didn't know. I thought there is one case where you have sculpted debt, and you would not have a circular, and no fees, and you would not have it. So this is, but before that, I'm going to go to my file menu. I'm going to go to options, and then when I go to options, I'm going to go to the formulas and unclick this thing called iterative calculations. Right now, if you want to check your circular references, you go to formula, error checking. We don't have anything. But as soon as we put our interest during construction in, we go down. Now, I'm obviously totally obsessed with this business of circular reference. I'm old, and I don't have much in my life. And why did that not create a circular reference, Shift Control R. Then the second one creates a circular reference. And you have these dreaded blue lines. And the copy and paste has a lot of problems. This iteration business has enormous problems. But in this case, I would have just gone and used the iteration button and not bothered with. And that's where some judgment, I think, comes in. Because a lot of people are going to be saying, Fancy, I know how to solve these things in a fancier way. And now we're back. Now everything's back. And so we've gone through the whole thing. Now I've gone through the cash flow waterfall pretty quickly, and we have whatever 22% for this scenario. I think what I should have done, it's so obvious. I should have put up here, perhaps, where should we put that? Let's put which scenario we're on right up here. So we're on the tenor sensitivity, and maybe we could even write here. I don't know if this is the right place to put that, of course. We could put this in. And so let's go back to our base case. And this is kind of what they seem to want. If you put 1 in here for the base case, then the big deal is oops. Okay, sorry about that. Our equity IRR is 20%. Oh, it's still enormously high. Okay, good. But no, okay. Now, then we go to the financial statements. And the financial statements, I was debating, should we do these financial statements on an annual basis and get really fancy and use a sum if thing to get that all done? But I said, no, let's just do them just the same, use the same timeline. We'll put our timeline in, and then we get all of we should show no EBITDA or anything else before this. The blue numbers come from the blue sheet. And then we just compute our EBITDA, put our total depreciation, including the IDC, and get the EBIT. Interest expense, not interest during construction, get the EBT. Taxes that you computed in the other thing, where we took the actual interest and the actual depreciation, including the IDC and all that. So you get the actual taxes. Okay, and then we can get our operating cash flow. And I don't use this net income, add back the depreciation. Just take this and don't forget to put in the subtract. And this may be, I think, what you really probably should do. And you probably maybe would get in trouble for this. So put a minus on this one and then put a minus on the taxes, because that's a better way to present this. Oh no, please don't. And then Shift Control R, and then you just Alt equal to get the sum. I don't like putting the sum in, by the way, because it can screw you up if you start moving things around. Then the investing cash flow, you include the interest during construction. Where is the interest during construction? Just a minute. On the investing cash flow. Let's where did that come from? Aha. Oh, I didn't put the interest during construction. I thought I just did that. Am I what am I doing? Am I oh, maybe I, no, that was down here. We put our payment in, and we put this in. I wonder what happened just there. Okay, am I imagining something? I put it in fees during construction. I made a mistake on purpose again. Okay, good. Okay, and then we put our interest during construction. So that's our investing cash flow, and we have some investing cash flow, and then nothing after that. And then on the financing cash flow, it's kind of like your sources and uses. You put the debt issued and the equity issued, that's positives, and then you subtract the interest and the payment and that dividends, which was the end of the cash flow waterfall. And if you did all this right, the net cash flow, which is your operating cash flow and your investing cash flow and your financing cash flow, that should all be zero. There shouldn't be any kind of little cash balance on there. Okay, And then we put in our balance sheet. And don't forget the silly little accounts payable and accounts receivable. And then for the gross plant, I don't do anything fancy. I just said take the capex up from the cash flow statement and just why did it was negative. The capex were negative, so you subtract it and you just build up the gross plant. You do the same thing with the depreciation because you had the depreciation up here. So do it in a lazy way. Don't start saying, oh, that's not the exact rule that Shell has, and then Shell has these silly goddamn rules that just irritate the hell out of me, and I started believing them, which was so idiotic. And then we kind of have our depreciation. Notice that our plant and depreciation eventually come to the same thing. And then we get our total assets. You have one extra year of working capital. You do the same thing with accounts payable. The debt balance, I guess this time you could get it from the other statement, or you could just take this, take the last year, last period debt balance, add the debt issues, subtract the repayments. That's all you're doing. And then when you get to the equity, I like to make an opening and closing balance on the equity and not put it in a different sheet. Now the dividends are, yeah, they get subtracted. And at the end of the day, the balance sheet balance is very, very good. And you can go through that, and that you need to practice that. You do need to practice this a few times. And then let's go to our summary page. And our summary page, I just this one, hang on, I'm just gonna maybe, I guess we gotta insert one here. I can't do that because I made a data table. I don't care. NLM. So let's do it like this. Because I added that other thing, it kind of messed it up a little, and I better can I? Whoops. Okay. So the first thing we can do is I said, okay, let's get our scenario here, and let's put a different scenario in, and then, oh, I forgot to show you the most important thing. Oh, shoot. Because we go all the way down to the end, and then we get some valuation statistics. And that's not hard mechanically, but it might be hard to think about. So we get our equity IRR here. Oh, that's why I was confused. It's the XIRR again. And then I call this the stupid MOIC. I have a grandchild. I say, his parents don't let him say stupid. I say, well, you can say stupid. Okay, and then we just add up all our investment and add up all our cash flow, and it's just the idiotic kind of thing to do. When you get to the equity IR with the sale, put the discount rate in, put a exit period, and make another little flag that just has one single true when you get the exit period. In fact, it's a good idea even to do this and show the sum period. And then the holding period, we have 15 periods because we make our holding period when it's less than or equal to that 3, and that 3 is right up here. So you use that timeline, and you better keep your timeline in sight. And then you make negative numbers, and what you do here is the NPV of the cash flow. I used regular old NPV because I started in the annual period. Because I said, okay, we're just going to start in the annual period, and then we're going to take the NPV of the subsequent equity cash flow. So you wait until the end to do this kind of stuff, and you notice the equity cash flow is in the sum. Otherwise, I could have used the XIRR. Okay, and then what you do is, because you're in that exit period, look at this. You have this really big thing, because what you're doing is you're using the flag and adding the NPV of the cash flow only in the exit period, which is the future cash flows. I hope you're getting an idea. You might have to look at the file. And this file, I promise you, I put on the website. I promise this time I put it on before even, so a couple of these changes are not there, but whatever. And then, so this equity value, you can also do that because they wanted to get the equity value. And then you can also get the free cash flow. And remember, we computed the after-tax free cash flow. And then I wasted time doing a little, whatever, weighted average cost of capital. But you notice I was a little bit cheeky because I said, no, I'm going to use 7%. Fuck, so screw the cap M. This is the true cost of capital. And you can argue, that's 3 years. That's about right. Okay, so that's the kind of true cost of capital for the assessment. And then once you do that, you notice this equity value you get over the holding period is much, much higher than the other one. So then I just said, okay, this time I said, if we want these equity values in it, the equity values go down over time because you're getting old. And the enterprise values, and they wanted those, and you just use the lookup and take a lookup and say, take lookup on this 5 and lookup on the working sheet. And I wouldn't be surprised if the test evaluator has no idea what you're doing because they're probably idiots, but whatever. I'm going to do it right. Anyway, you can just use the lookup and then you can get the equity IRR. I should have probably put the equity IRR over the holding period. Whoops. Okay, so we're just putting a summary. I have that old computer that cost me $180. It's like an antique almost holding period. I tried to get a big screen, and I couldn't get it to work, one of these TV things. So let's get that one. Maybe I should put a new version of this up on that whatever. So we get this, and then here's the big trick. Here, this one, I said, let's make a data table. And in this data table, put 1, 2, 3, 4 for the periods, and then I kind of did a little control. If you want to hide a thing, you press Control space bar. Shift alternate left arrow takes it away. Shift alternate right arrow, so you cannot show the little thing from the data table. And let's put down here the equity IRR over the holding period. Okay. So I guess other than this complete crap, well, they had such bad assumptions about using P75 and all that too. But whatever. I mean, why would you do that? I guess maybe then you could use P25 too. So once you get that, I'm going to delete this data table and let's do it right. So this one is let's put one more thing here. Whoops. Okay, and so this one is Control R, and I'm wasting time on with you and wasting your precious time on this silly thing where I put this in. So then we put number 7 here. And what we want to do is we want to make we want to make the scenario in our input sheet change from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. The data table is one of the most horrible tools in Excel and one of the best tools in Excel, like your life, if you got married or something like that. You put this time, you take this and you say, let's use this thing and make this go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 and get all of this data up here and then do it across. So we're just basically going to change this to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. But what we need to do then is to make this number equal to our number over here so we can do it in a different sheet. Otherwise, you would have had to do it in the same sheet and it wouldn't look very good. And then you could take all of this stuff, Alt D for data table, T for data table. We're not changing any columns. The columns are the output, and we just put this in, and because we used that iteration button, everything kind of works out, and we get all of our stuff together. If you can do this, I think that's a big deal. I really do. I think, I guess I was going to make it a colored sheet, but I'm not going to because I'm just going to stop the video. So maybe it was better. Maybe it was better just to stop it anyway. Okay, bye.